Hello. Today we're talking about the Great Depression. Okay, lasting from the 1929 to 1939. The Great Depression was an economic misery in the United States, Germany, and Japan. Just to name a few, it began after the stock market crash of October 19, 1929, which caused tyranny upon hundreds of thousands of investors. Business owners couldn't pay their workers. Millions of workers went broke and homeless. It was only a matter of time before jobs and companies went out of business. Banks were affected too. Banks had crashed and all money in there had been gone. Some banks didn't crash immediately, but they didn't last for long. In 1933, some 15 million people had lost their jobs. The Great Depression was the worst economic crash to date.
Most of the culture in the 1930s were singers and athletes that represent their culture.
Duke Ellington was a originator of big band jazz. He also played the piano.
Margaret Mitchell was a writer from Atlanta who had also published the novel Gone with the Wind. The novel soon after was made into a film that soon gained much popularity.
Jesse Owens, who was known as the Buckle-Eye Bullet, was an athlete who ran an American track. He broke 2 world records in 1936 Olympic in Berlin, winning 4 gold medals.
The election of 1932, Herbert Hoover versus FDR.
Herbert Hoover was president when the Great Depression began in the late 1920s. Hoover believed that the federal government should not play a big role in the economy. He thought the economy would improve on its own as it had in the past. The economy did not get better though. Instead, it got worse. People continued to lose their homes and jobs. Many Americans started to think the government should do more to help. Hoover asked Congress to help struggling businesses and unemployed workers. Congress made new laws that loaned money to banks, railroads, and other companies. Unfortunately, these laws did not improve the economy.
Some Americans blamed the poor economy on President Hoover. They lived in something called a shanty. They called them Hoovervilles because they blamed Herbert Hoover about them having a poor economy.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a Democrat, ran for president against Hoover in the 1932 election. Roosevelt said, I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people. Roosevelt thought the federal government should take action to end the Great Depression. He promised to create government programs to help people who were suffering. Americans believed these programs would help them. They elected Roosevelt as president. When Roosevelt took office in 1933, he gave hope to many.
One of FDR's famous quotes was, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself."
Between the 1933 and 1937, about the 350 dust storms swept through the Great Plains.
People ran for shelter from swirling dust and dirt so thick it can block the sun. The storms ruined crops and covered land and homes with dust.
The southern part of the Great Plains wasn't always known as the Dust Bowl. This is a map of the Great Plains and where the Dust Bowl was.
This is a picture of what the Dust Bowl looked like.
All right, guys, to wrap up the Great Depression, we're going to talk about Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his program called the New Deal. So that was his program that he believed could get America out of the Great Depression. One of the programs was actually designed by his wife, Eleanor Roosevelt. She was the First Lady. The First Lady is someone who refers to the wife of a president. She was the wife of FDR, and one of her administrations was the National Youth Administration, which created jobs for young people. So imagine being just out of college, 21 years old, maybe even 18 out of high school, and the world doesn't have any jobs. So she created this specifically for young people between the ages of 16 to 25. As you can see here, there were a lot of posters, a lot of advertising, and a lot of opportunity. Another one of Roosevelt's New Deal plans was called the Civilian Conservation Corps, or the CCC. This created jobs which aimed to conserve, and protect our natural environment. So they did things like plant trees, cleared hiking trails, and other kinds of conservation projects. So they were trying to give back to nature. But as you can see through these pictures, it's also giving young men and women jobs. They're getting paid for these jobs by the government. So they are working for the government in these programs. Then there was the Tennessee Valley Authority, or the TVA, and this built dams all along the Tennessee River. So if you think about the Southeast at this time, it was a much rural region, and this dams create hydroelectricity, which is electricity that's produced from running water. Very similar to how windmills now produce electricity. Basically, it just eliminates the burning of fossil fuels, and this provided electricity to some of the rural areas in the Southeast. And as we'll learn eventually in science, these dams also prevented floods. So a lot of those farmlands around the area too are protected from being flooded, especially in the spring, by these dams. Another administration is called the Works Progress Administration, or the WPA, which hired people to build streets, parks, libraries, and schools. So it built a lot of those government buildings and things that we needed and the government needed to provide for us. And again, this gave young men and women a lot of jobs. They were finally getting paid. So it's making their way to getting out of this Great Depression because people are finally getting paid to work. Even though companies and businesses and banks are shut down, they're able to earn money thanks to the government. This also hired authors to write about places in the United States. And the last one that we're going to talk about today is the Social Security Act, which provides money to people over the age of 65 and helps those who have disabilities and cannot work. So you have a Social Security card the day that you're born, and what that means is that when you turn 65, you'll get a small check from the government every month. Now this check is aimed to help you live in a life where you don't have to work every day. A lot of you guys will also work in business or in government or own your own company, and when you do that, you also make a retirement plan. The Social Security Act is aiming to give those people who are too old to work or you've earned your retirement, it gives you a little bit of money every single month. I hope these videos made by myself and your classmates were very useful to you. And what I want you to do is watch it one more time and then create a 3-2-1 in your social studies notebook about what you learned in this video.